ahead and give Sylvia control over here.
All right, thank you very much. I hope everyone's had a great time today at PancakesCon. I know I sure have. I've learned a ton. Incredibly excited to be speaking at this virtual con, and I hope you enjoy. So this presentation is aimed for people who have never really investigated web application security before. I know when I was first getting started off, I really could have used a talk like this, so seeing something aimed at new people, I just had to throw at it. We're going to talk about intercepting proxies, the why we might use them, some of the options available out there, and then we're going to have a live demo, assuming that the internet and demo gods do not decide I'm not going to do that. So let's jump into the why. I guess I should start with actually who. So I'm Sylvia Skillinen. I'm a QA tester. I focus on web application security. That puts me in kind of an interesting space halfway between QA and AppSec. That gives me a lot of opportunity to do neat stuff and also very little opportunity to change policy. So kind of an interesting space to inhabit. With that in mind, if you haven't heard some of these words, you are probably still ahead of where I was when I started. I'm going to try and define stuff, but if questions come up, I'll do my best to answer them during the presentation. So when we're talking about a web proxy, this is what happens beneath the application or beneath the UI layer at the protocol layer. If you're familiar with the OSI model, we're going to shift that layer just a little bit. If you're not familiar with OSI, don't worry about it. We're going to talk the same language the web applications talk when they are not showing you the shiny screen. So we're going to learn what the web app's doing. We're going to see where else it might be sending data and how it might send and receive that, how it might encode that. That's where life gets really interesting for me. The best tools I've had in order to do this are OWASP Zap or Zaproxy, Burp Suite, and the humble developer tools built into your browser. There are, of course, many more than this. We're going to go over some of their features, some of their pros and cons as we go. As we start, of course, you have to think about testing scope. All of these tools, with the exception of developer tools, which kind of does it implicitly, will set a scope. Everything in that scope can and will be scanned. This can be a hostile act. The obligatory disclaimer is please don't scan stuff you don't own. This is a HackerCon. You make your own choices. Burp and Zaproxy have attack tools. To test responsibly, constrain them to your target. Developer tools doesn't so much have attack tools, but we'll see what it does have because there's a couple things where it really is the best choice. Everything out of your scope can be ignored. So you want to define it carefully, otherwise you can spend hours spinning around on, well, why can't I see this thing coming in? No, it's out of scope. Oops. I speak with the voice of experience here. So starting at the most simple, developer tools, you press Control-Shift-I in your browser. Chrome is really good at it. Firefox and Edge have it too. You can view and intercept your page source and your DOM. You can view and intercept requests and responses coming through. You can see scripts running in the console, which is great. And you can see your includes very easily. We're going to get there in a minute. Burp Suite has many levels of access to its tools. I guess I should say it actually has 3. There's Community, there's Pro, there's Enterprise. I'm going to limit everything we do in this demo to the Community Edition. You don't have to pay for it. It unfortunately does not include the spider, which is great. That's kind of too bad. Zaproxy does have a spider. Again, we can view and intercept our requests and responses. That's kind of the flagship feature of the intercepting proxy. All of these other things, intruder, repeater, so on and so forth, are tabs. So when we're talking about fuzzing, you're all probably familiar with that. It's the idea of throwing a whole bunch of requests at a field and seeing what it does. How does it fall over when you send content it doesn't expect, or you send a whole bunch of content it does expect? You can manually resend requests, which is a major advantage that both Burp and Zaproxy have over developer tools. You can look at things like statistical analysis of tokens, which is a feature that, as far as I'm aware, Burp Community is the only free proxy that has that. I could be wrong. Decoder, comparer, all very good. Burp and Zaproxy are both extendable through their own scripting and APIs, which is also great for those of you who like to write code. As far as free stuff goes, Zaproxy probably has the most functions. It's maintained by OWASP. They're awesome. So that makes it my favorite by far. That bias is definitely going to be on display here in a minute. Customizable alerts, automated spidering, AJAX spidering. There's been kind of a historical issue where proxying asynchronous requests is just not the easiest thing to do. And over the past few years, these proxy tools have gotten so much better in that respect. Zaproxy's AJAX spider is honestly really sweet. There's a HUD mode. I encourage you to go and play with the tutorial. I think it's great. And for the free tier, Zaproxy is also automatable and includable in your build pipeline, which is fantastic if you are in an environment pushing builds all the time and needing a way to scan them for major vulnerabilities. It won't necessarily make your build pass, but it can catch build failures really fast, and that's very valuable. So before you start, go out, download these tools, hook your browser to it, and go, wait a minute, nothing works. Modern browsers using HSTS, that being strict transport security, mean that you cannot ignore certificate errors. The way you get around this is that Burp and Zaproxy issue their own certificates. These are unique per instance, and you can regenerate them with the touch of a button. You need to install them in your browser if you want to do anything over TLS that is using HSTS. That's pretty straightforward. There's a ton of tutorials, so I'm not going to cover it here. So for demo time, we're going to use the overthewire.org not us exercise. I assume I'm pronouncing that correctly. I could be completely wrong. This is an exercise all about server-side web security. If you saw that awesome CTF panel earlier today, this was actually one of the ones mentioned. And I highly encourage folks who are just getting started with web security to go out there, take a look at it, and mess around. Even if you're not just getting started, you're going to blow through the first few exercises real quick, and then they start to get really cool. So here we are on level 1. We can't just view source. The password for the next level is on this page, but right-clicking has been blocked. So starting with our most basic, our Chrome developer tools, we're going to Control-Shift-I, pull up this cool panel, and you can see a whole bunch of tabs here. The network tab will record all network traffic. If there were any JavaScript, there doesn't appear to be, possibly because the server says you're not allowed to load the favicon. Yay. But we can also view the page source without right-clicking. So much for that. And there's our password. Quick and easy, right? While we're in developer tools, we can explore a little bit and see, here are any sources that might have been included. There was a CSS. There's an image here. We can preview it. There's some JavaScript. And even though we got that 401 over on the network tab, we can see everything that's in the browser. DevTools is really great for this because your browser has to know what's going on the page, obviously. So it will display all of it to you, allow you to set breakpoints, investigate the DOM if you have something a little more complicated than this, interfere with its operations. This is a really great way to say, oh, your client-side validation is bugging me. Go away. And just turn it off. We didn't actually need to interact with the network at all here. The one thing that I wish developer tools had, and it doesn't, which makes sense because it's not necessarily made as a security tool, is the ability to tamper with and resend requests. And for that, we need to go to a little bit more of an advanced tool. So this is OWASP Zap. This UI is a little bit more dense. You can see a lot of different tabs going on here. I have my Firefox browser here. And you can see over in this wee little corner, I have Proxy. Now, this is just one of many proxy managers that's good for handling various different proxies. You can use it for intercepting proxies like this. You can also use it for web proxies if that's your jam. Pre-configure, and then it's as easy as clicking to point your browser at it. I really enjoy that. So let's jump into exercise 3. If it'll load for me here. If not, I'll go back into Chrome. Okay, there we go. Like that. Okay, that's an interesting error. Let's actually go and troubleshoot that real quick. Now, something that is interesting to note is that Chrome and Edge actually work through the system proxy. So you need to set it. I'm trying to go to Zap, so that's accurate. There we go. You need to set it in your Windows settings. Now, that is going to channel all of my traffic through my proxy. In fact, remember when I was saying, hey, this won't work right out of the box if your certs don't line up? Fortunately, this doesn't enforce HSTS, or I would be doing cert installation instead of trying to demo right now. There we go. That is really not happy, is it? Oh, because I'm putting in the wrong password. Haha. And there we have it. There is nothing on this page. And indeed, if we go and look at the elements, hold up the style sheet, because for the course of this exercise, we're ignoring that. There is, in fact, nothing on this page. So let's jump over into Zaproxy. We can see here that we did a get, and we can actually do an attack and spider this page. What that will do is follow every link, look in every nook and cranny this can actually find. And we can see that some things have popped up here. So we have a robots.txt. This tells various robots, hey, don't look in these directories. And here we have something called secret. Clearly this is extremely secret because it has had its E's replaced with numbers 3. Let's actually put that in our browser, see what we can find. So we have something called users.txt. And in fact, there's our password. So I'm going to grab that one, move us on to Natus4, and remember to take off that directory and file as I go. In addition, I'm going to move us over to Burp Suite so you can see a demo of that as well. I changed the default port. If you're running two proxies simultaneously and try to bind them to the same port, they will not work. This can be frustrating, especially if you are chaining proxies. There was a mention of Microsoft Fiddler earlier. The reason you might chain proxies is because some are better at supporting different methods of authentication than others. So for instance, Fiddler is the easiest way I've ever seen to proxy Kerberos authentication. Kerberos can be a big pain in the neck if you don't handle it just exactly the way it wants to be handled. So having Microsoft's native proxy handle that smoothly makes your life way easier. Fiddler does not have some of the nicer features that I've seen out of Zaproxy or Burp Suite. So in order to make that work, you tell your first proxy that you want to use the features to point at your second proxy that can use the authentication, and you're good to go. On different ports, always. So I've taken up the liberty in both of these to set up a scope beforehand. You can see that I've already got NATAS4 in here. I'm going to load it in Chrome. Yes, go. And I'm going to close developer tools so we can see what's going on here. Let's see if we can load it in Firefox and point to Burp. There we go. You didn't like that, did you? Okay. So Burp actually threw an error and said I couldn't authenticate to that. I'm going to try once more and make sure I actually copy the entire password. There we go. You are visiting from some null value, while authorized users can come only
All right, it looks like we're
says,
experiencing some technical difficulties. You cut out there for just a minute. Let's see if, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. All right.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'm going to repeat just a little bit. If you're thinking through this for the first time, you do research about how do I tell a website where I'm from. If you're a little more experienced or you are already familiar with how the web works, you would say, aha, that's the referrer header. I'm going to send that to my repeater, which allows me to manually tamper requests. I'm going to paste my value in here, make sure I've got the whole thing, including the slash at the end, and then I'm going to send. And this site has rendered. See if I can find my password. Nope, didn't like it. Let's jump back into the browser and see what it actually said. Okay, apparently that didn't take it. So instead, we're going to go back into the proxy. We're going to turn intercept on, which means all traffic will be channeled to the proxy instead of channeled to the browser. And we're going to refresh the page and try it again. Same trick, different way to get there. We're going to hit forward, jump back into the browser. Whoop, wrong browser. Access granted. So I hope that's been an interesting display. This is the nuts and bolts of using a proxy. All of these have features that are way more advanced than I am demoing here. You can do some incredibly cool things with the fuzzers in either Zaproxy or Burp. And if you have any questions, now's the moment.
All right, so there was one question, and it was someone saying that they were originally going to present a Red Team OSCent Firefox variant. Do you think Fiddler is a good external tool to use for web browsers?
I think it is. It has some limitations, and I haven't used it for probably the past 9-10 months. So there may have been some features implemented that I don't know about. Fiddler is great for Microsoft-only environments. As I mentioned, it's great for Kerberos authentication. And if you're looking for something that your company will accept or something that your environment will support easily, it's a really good one. I do like the fuzzers in Zaproxy better than either of the other options I've mentioned in this talk.
All right, there are no more questions on this side, so on to the next bit.
Great, let's talk about patching. Close out of all this jazz. All right. As a quick note, any photo you see that is not attributed to someone else is a photo of my actual pants. You're going to see some pretty janky patches today, as well as hopefully some better ones. And let's talk through why that would be interesting. So we've all heard you have to keep it patched mostly in relationship to servers and software. A lot of people tell you it's easier to replace worn out clothes, and most of the time they're actually right. We live in the era of fast fashion, where you can go down to the store and buy something that will probably fit you and look okay for not all that much money, but that doesn't mean it's your only choice. If you don't like what's on offer, or if you have other reasons to patch something, if you're hard to fit, this is a good way to keep your clothes running. Writing the tagline for this slide, those are too good to work in. I can hear it in my grandmother's voice. Especially for folks who lived through economic troubles, who may have lived through political, social, military troubles, keeping your clothes in one piece can be really important. You can do it visibly or invisibly. You can do it with or without a sewing machine, and you can do it with or without any sewing experience whatsoever. Whatsoever? Ha. You can patch for fashion as well as function. This can always be a way of signaling community, whether that's about music, whether that's, and punks have been doing this since punks, military and first responder folks have entire lexicons of patches that I don't even know how to read. And you've probably seen people walking around with national flags on their jackets, whether or not they're signaling anything aside from affiliation. This is a really big thing, and unfortunately it's too much to go into here, but people are always signaling through fashion what they might be interested in, what they might be like, what they might want you to think they're like. It's an entire language and it fascinates me to no end. Also, there's the matter of sustainability. So this guy is wearing a Boro robe. This is truly an extreme. Some of these textiles can be hundreds of years old, and it's very likely that every inch of that fabric is padded 3 to 5 layers thick. That gentleman is probably quite warm in that robe. As you can see, they're also really interesting looking. Some of these can be embroidered hem to collar. I kid you not. And they can be extremely valuable as well. When these were created, Boro is a Japanese art, but certainly Japan is not the only region that's developed a patching process like this. It is a little bit of an extreme case because growing fiber plants on an archipelago with an extremely variable climate is not easy. At the time this was begun, every scrap of fabric was precious. Every scrap was something that you wanted to keep functional as long as it could be kept. So you end up with these robes that were handed down person to person to person over centuries. Now, I'm not saying we have to take it to that extreme in the modern age, but I am saying that my oldest pair of jeans is about 3 times the lifespan of my average pair of jeans. So what do you need to do this? Clothes, something to patch with, be that fabric or thread. There's materials and methods that are suitable to thread only. You need a needle. Optionally, you might like an iron or a sewing machine, and you're gonna need a little time. Iron-on patches, sadly I don't have a photo, mostly because I could not find an iron-on patch in the house, are the easiest method of doing this in the modern world. Just takes an iron, a little bit of time. Just like your software, you want to make sure the patch covers the whole vulnerability, whether that is an actual hole or whether it's an area of fabric wear. If you've ever fallen on concrete or gravel and just skinned the heck out of your knee and noted that suddenly your pants only have threads going one way, that's what I mean by fabric wear. Take a little side note here. Fabric has, or I should say woven fabric has, knits are magic and I don't know much about them. Woven fabric has threads that go 2 directions, perpendicular. The warp threads go up and down, they're very tough. The weft threads go side to side, they're a little less tough. If you've ever seen the thing where somebody has a zillion threads across the knee of their pants, that's the warp threads peeking out. You want to cover the whole thing. If you sew your patch to just half the threads, it will come off. Iron-on, easiest, most common, cheapest way to fix your hole. Unfortunately, it is also the least durable. Because of the adhesive. Adhesive comes off in the wash eventually. Even really nice fabric adhesives will do this. Or you can sew on. Takes a needle, a thread, a patch, and some time. You want to look at that black patch on the left. This is actually on the inside of a pair of jeans. That line about making sure your patch covers the whole repair, this area of fabric wear on the right is where the patch did not quite cover the whole worn spot. And you can see this little square stitch around it. That's a machine stitch. That's where I had to patch to cover the existing patch. These are now garden jeans. This is still pretty straightforward. If you're putting a patch on a jacket, maybe you pin it in place first. Maybe you walk around with it for a few days, see if you like it, and then you sew it on. It's fast, it's easy, it's durable. It's always going to be a visible repair, whether it's the stitching or whether it's the patch itself, because you're going to cross to the other side of the fabric and come back in with your needle and thread. There are ways you can do that to make it less visible, but it's pretty much always going to be visible. And if you're patching a particularly thick piece of denim, it might take pliers to force the needle through. Don't worry about it, just do it. We can also talk a little bit about darning. This is the art of replacing thread. So when we're talking about those warp and weft threads, when the weft wears out, you can actually weave new thread in there. The easiest way to do it is with a sewing machine. Put your light fabric or your interfacing on the inside, stitch up and down, back and forth. I did that here with a zigzag. I needn't have done that because generally you use a zigzag on stretch material. This ceased to stretch immediately because I sewed it to non-stretch material. You can't see me shrugging, but I am. You want to stitch in line with the existing threads until that worn area is covered. This is a pretty durable way of making a repair. And if you use matching thread, if I use dark blue instead of black and gone a little bit denser, you can hide it pretty well. This can be also time consuming. And the unfortunate part of machine darning is that machine thread is just often not very strong. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that, but I'll spare you. You can also hand darn. Now, this is a fairly floppy hand darn, honestly. I did this in a hotel room with a tiny little sewing kit that I got from the front desk because they didn't have an iron-on patch either. It takes a lot of time. You want to hook your needle in where the fabric is still sound. Again, make sure your patch covers the whole vulnerability. Do a few little stitches, and then you weave your needle in and out. I was going fast and loose because I needed these pants to be ready immediately. I was helping somebody move, and I blew up my jeans. If you do a better job of this, you can go through and actually weave your needle in and out of that warp thread, one thread at a time with matching thread. That makes a repair that is beautiful and every bit as durable as the actual fabric that you are replacing it with your work. It also takes hours and hours. It can be totally invisible. You can work patterns in it if you're that good. You can replace fabric on clothing from silk to wool to cotton to synthetics. You can stitch holes shut and do this. You can put a patch on the back to reinforce and do this. The only con I can think of is that, man, this takes some time. If you want to make a beautiful functional repair, this is one of the best ways to do it. So I hope, especially with the, oh, let's all stay home, now we can't go buy fresh clothes, and the ongoing crisis of a lack of sustainability in society at large, go out and patch something. Try it out. Might be fun. I think we have just a few minutes left. If there are any questions here?
Absolutely. Some more tongue-in-cheek than others. Like, do these patches require a reboot, or can we just restart the service?
I would recommend washing them. Throw the whole object in the wash. That might be a reboot.
But we do have some other intercepting proxies questions, and one of them was, what is it about Kerberos that the others don't like?
They just don't seem to support it. The Kerberos negotiation doesn't seem to be handled natively or at all in either burp or zap proxy. You could probably script it yourself, or you can set up a proxy chain. I know which one's faster for me.
And another question was, if you send a request via burp, it will show the reply only in code, right? No image?
Correct. It won't show you images. You can sometimes click over to your sources and see it there, but there's not a good way of previewing an image in burp community.
All right. And is there a way to auto-deploy your patches?
Unfortunately, no. It's manual every time.
I imagine that would be the iron-on patches, right? It's as close as you could get.
If you've got an obliging relative who likes to sew, maybe you can get them to help. It's still just outsourcing the work, though.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any new questions, so thank you so very much for your time. I would also like to thank everybody that showed up to watch, all the organizers, of course, Leslie, for organizing the entire event. And yeah, there we go, I think. I don't know how I'm supposed to end this. So I'm gonna
Maybe that'll work. Hey, perfect. No curses for this, Mike.
Not yet, anyways.
All right. So with that, that's the end of the stream. Thank you all for watching very much. That's the end of PancakesCon 2020. I don't know if there will be a 2021, but hopefully so. This has been a lot of fun to watch, and it all came together really quickly, so that was awesome. If you like this kind of content, I do InfoSec stuff as well, more infrequently since RallySec has stopped filming. But I